Next, we have Challenger Exploration. Challenger Exploration aspires to become a globally significant gold producer, supported by its 2 complementary gold-copper projects in South America. The company today announced 3 200-meter plus intercepts from the Julian Gold Project in Argentina, and today we are joined by Challenger's Managing Director, Kris. Kris, welcome.
Thanks, Jane. Thanks for having me.
I'll just pull up your presentation here.
Yeah, sure. And if you go straight to slide 3, what I'll do is I'll predominantly focus today on these new results and the results we've got in the last 3 or 4 weeks as we've worked out where the project is. And before I do that, I'll give a little bit of an introduction for newcomers. So sort of Challenger in a nutshell, 2 projects, both in South America, both gold. Key project is our Wallilan project. There's an historical resource there of about 600,000 ounces of better than 10 grams, which is open in all directions and getting bigger. And then, underneath that, we've now discovered a sort of big intrusion-hosted gold system as well. You see an intercept there of 116 at 1.1. You're probably the nearest analogue to this system is what De Grey are drilling now up in the Pilbara. We've got 5 rigs going. We've had 5 rigs going for about 3 months. And, some of the results we're getting recently, 131 metres at 2.5, 110 at 3, beginning to speak for themselves in terms of scale. Second project in Ecuador, we sit about 5 k's along strike from a 17 million ounce ore body that's going through permitting. We're sort of getting similar results. We think we've got the strike extensions of that, a result there of 134 metres at a gram. Again, very much focused on Wallilan at the moment. Cash at bank, 15. We've got another 3.5 million we can pull down. So, well funded at the moment. Fully diluted EV with the current share price about 290 million. May seem expensive given a 600,000 ounce resource, but in terms of where we're getting to and what this resource will look like in 3 or 4 months, I think we're significantly undervalued. We'll go to the next slide. Thanks, Jane. So look, focusing on Wallilan a little bit more, those results there, 8.3 at 17.7, they're the results you get in this high-grade skarn system that sort of wraps around this big low-grade system. And some of the results there in the sort of lower grade system sitting below it does get some high grades there, 39 at 5. And as I said, 5 rigs going, open in all directions. In Ecuador, last work there before us was 25 years ago. Newmont got some fantastic results, 156 metres at 2.6. To be honest, I'm not sure why they didn't follow those up. We've basically done a big geophysics survey, soil geochemistry survey. We're assaying a bunch of historical core that had never been assayed and basically getting similar results to the 17 million ounce ore body. You see a couple of the results there, 146 metres at 1.5 grams. And we'll look to start a drilling program there around April. Next slide. Thanks, Jane. So I'll focus in on our main project, Wallilan. So the slide there on the right basically shows the project as we thought it was when we first got in. You can see you've got this high-grade zone of skarn mineralisation dipping down dip. Basically, it's sulphides within limestone. And, that hole there, that first hole, the third hole we drilled, 6.1 metres at 34.6, that really gives you an idea of why this project was available. That hole was a twin of an old Canadian hole that got 4 metres at about 4. What the Canadians hadn't worked out was that basically the gold all sits in sulphides. And if you're not getting a virtually 100% core recovery, you're washing the sulphides out ahead of the drill bit. So, we've now drilled a number of holes, basically twinned old Canadian holes that got no significant results. Drilled underneath and outside some of their holes, they thought had closed it off and got results like 6.7 metres at 14. So, open in all directions in the high grade. We're in San Juan, which is a tier 1 mining jurisdiction. Barrick have been there for years. You've got Lundin Gold starting a bankable feasibility study on their Jose Maria. Sit on granted mining leases, so we're halfway permitted. And it's not your traditional WA gold in cyanide. The work last done 20 years ago, you get 80% of the gold and silver into a fairly high grade gold silver concentrate. And in many respects, that makes it easier. We don't need to muck around with the back half of the plant. We just sell a simple concentrate. That network was done with too small a grind. We're redoing the network now. We're actually waiting for the results, but we think we'll be able to do better than that 80% recovery. Next slide, thanks. And this is what I really want to focus on. You know, the results there on the left, that's basically some of the results we've got out in the last 2.5 weeks. And really what you're seeing is, as we get a better understanding of this system, we're starting to know where to focus in, where it extends. You know, there's some fantastic results there. I think the system is starting to show its size. Although, you know, one thing that is a bit embarrassing, everything in this whole system has basically been dipping to the west. And you can see today's result, it looks like the system has flipped over on us and we're dipping the opposite way. So the holes have sort of gone down the mineralization. You know, it's still, 70 to 80 meters wide in that section. But what we're going to do now is we've flipped our drilling around so that we're drilling across this thing for the purposes of getting it into JORC. Next slide. Thanks, Jane. This is a snapshot of that high-grade historical resource. The gold there are the wireframes from that. And, you know, what this shows, I've overlaid some of our recent drilling. You can see there's a hole there, hole 141, that got, 6.5 meters at 16 in the middle of what we call the gap zone that hadn't been drilled. Hole 68 that got 27 meters at 8, sort of down dip underneath the main sort of Sanchez vein. What you've got here is the Magnata and Sanchez veins are the controlling structures for the system. They sort of dip, they're east-west and they're vertical. You've had a source of fluids below, probably this intrusives, which form the core of the whole system. The fluid has come up these faults, created these fairly continuous high-grade zones, 5 to 10 meters wide. And then you've got these limestone rock units that dip sort of across that out into the page. And where the fluid coming up the faults has hit these limestone units, it's basically dissolved the limestone, replaced it with sulfides and gold, and you get another series of lodes that are, again, 5 to 10 meters wide, going about 10 grams on average. And you can see there are a number of these holes that have basically pushed it along. What we're seeing is Merchalira, centers on, and now the Magnata all look like they want to join. They won't join perfectly. We've pushed the Magnata vein down dip. We've got a hole there that got, I think it's 4 meters at 11.3. That hole actually intersected high-grade mineralization 530 meters down hole. And where that's significant, it is that this 600,000 ounces all sits within the top 100 meters of surface. And we've now pushed that mineralization down to 400 meters subsurface. So basically, 4 times the mineralization that is undrilled. And, the final thing on that is the actual high-grade assemblage and the center of this system looks like it's right down to the south there at Centerson. So theoretically, take what we've got there to the north, wrap it over again to the south. So, you double that 600,000 ounces. And, look, we're not done yet. I mean, it's a big high-grade system and, going to get much bigger. Next slide. And I'll quickly talk about, the underlying intrusion-hosted system. Just to put it in context, we've got those same gold lodes there, which is the high-grade mineralization. And the purple there is basically what we knew of this intrusion-hosted mineralization, or the intrusives, about 2 months ago. So we had a big blob to the left of page, big blob to the right. We were hopeful they'd join up. We now know they do join up. They form a continuous zone over 1 kilometre. You can see today's results in there, the 200 meters at 1, 209 meters at 1.1, that sort of push this further into the gap zone. You can see the result we put out last week, which is, 131 meters at 2.5 in a zone where we didn't think the intrusives were. What we're hoping and what it looks like now, and we'll go to the next slide where you can see that. Thanks, Jane. Is that basically we've got this zone, 2 kilometers long. The figure on the right is basically a plan view. The pink is where we see these intrusive rocks. The blue holes are holes we're waiting on assays, so we've got lots of news to come. You can see the sort of the yellow zone at the top is basically where today's holes are. And, that's a zone 200 meters along strike. It's 75 meters wide, defined down to 300 meters. You take a block that's 75 meters by 200 meters by 300 meters at a gram, you'll squeeze, 350,000 ounces into there as a guide to, the scale of this thing. We've got the second sort of zone there down to the south that straddles the Magnata Fault, where we've defined, a similar sort of, 80 meter wide zone. looks like it goes about 1 gram, over 400 or 500 meter strike. And we're now hoping that basically these two zones are going to join up. We've got a couple of holes we announced this morning that we think are probably still not on the main structure, but they've both got 40, 50 meters of mineralization in intrusive. So, we're beginning to get excited that we might have a 1.5 kilometer zone here that sits, below the high grade. Next slide. Thanks, Jane. And this is just gives you a visual idea. On the left here, we've got a cross section of that hole in the intrusives there that got 131 at 2.5. And at the very top of that in outcrop, basically there's visible gold in that same unit. So, we've got 3 or 4 more holes pending that we've drilled across that. And the added bonus there is, this is an area where we hadn't been able to find the traditional high grade skarn. And, all 4 of those holes we've now punched in across that we're waiting on assays for have intersected 5 and 6 meters of massive sulfides up at the top there, which has told us where that main high grade zone is. So, we've got a bit of a double bonus with those holes. And the figure on the right there just shows the gold zone in plan looking down. You can see it's, some of those holes in blue to the very top of the page. Again, waiting on assays, but they look like they're getting into, very similar stuff. We're now been here long enough that we can visually get a fair idea if it's going to carry. And, we're very eagerly waiting the assays of those holes. Next slide. Thanks, Jane. And this, I'll touch on. This is basically an intersect we got about 10 days ago. We basically put a hole, drilled through the main sort of high-grade skarn. It got the typical 10 meters at 10 in that zone, and then drilled through another 50 meters and got into a new zone that basically we got 40 meters at 6.2 grams in that zone. Luck's a fortune. Our hole number 11 was meant to actually drill down through there and test that zone, but the drillers dropped a bit down the hole. So, hole 142, better 130 holes late than never. But, we've now got a hole that's halfway down, testing down dip of that. We're not sure whether that's another zone of this mineralized intrusive, and we've hit a high grade sort of, pod that you do see in them. We'll have some news on that in the next couple of weeks. But look, if you've got something sitting below the main zone that's 40 meters wide, going 6, it doesn't need to extend very far before it starts to add some serious ounces as well. Next slide, Jane. And look, just to wrap up, in terms of news flow, metallurgy, which is, due soon, we've still got 67 holes that are in for assay that are pending. The labs are turning them around now, so the news flow won't dry up anytime soon. We're sort of we've started the calculations to see, how much of this mineralization we can get into JORC at the moment. We've got a fairly good idea of, what's there, and it's a pretty big number. We're just doing the numbers to see where we need to infill drill to get this into JORC, because, we'll have a JORC out in the first half of this year. I think, for us, we don't want to mislead the market and get a JORC out before we've got, enough of what we know is there into JORC. I'd hate to come out with a number that, is much smaller than what's actually there, and shareholders don't understand that. So look, you will get a JORC resource out. Bunch more drilling results. We've started some regional exploration north and south, where we've picked up some pretty interesting samples about 1 kilometre north that we're basically hoping will assay well, and a couple of other surprises as well to look forward to. So lots of news flow. Next slide, Jane, and I'll quickly touch on Ecuador. So look, in Ecuador, again, great project. We've been quietly going about our business there. We're actually in the middle of picking up some more ground around our existing holding just to fill in the patchwork. And, you've got to be pretty stupid to put out results while you're in the middle of doing that, but that's almost finished. We've been busily finishing all the soil work. We've got another 15, 20 holes that have never been assayed that we've assayed, and we're waiting for final results for. And we've channel sampled some of these large surface anomalies where basically they look exactly the same surface footprint. It's this 17 million ounce ore body next door. And, we can see from the couple of holes that got into those things where we've got 134 of one that they're the same. So a bit of a drilling program starting in April, just to, very targeted to scope out some of these main anomalies. But, there will be some good news coming in Ecuador as well, but very much Argentina is the focus. So Jane, I'll wrap up there and happy to take any questions.
Well, thank you so much, Kris. It was great to hear about the projects. We have had a few questions come through, but you have answered them as well. So just for those that weren't, maybe were not online, with the results that came out today, does this change the exploration strategy and drilling program for 2021?
Look, yes, it does. I mean, basically now what we've done is we've sort of are going to go back and drill the opposite way. We've also now taken the view that, and we decided this, about 3 weeks ago. We've got two options. We can chase and infill and come out with a resource that's a fraction of what's there, or, really we're going to actually get out there and have a go and effectively try to find the limits of this deposit. The aim here is, can we end up with 4 or 5 million ounces? And if we can, let's scope it out, and then we'll worry about sort of infilling to get a measured and indicated resource later on. Let's go for glory here and just find out how big this thing is.
There was actually a couple of questions about the JORC resource and timing of that. I know you did mention it, but maybe for those who maybe missed it.
Yeah, so look, at the moment we've just started the work to see what actually we can get into JORC. The way JORC works is, we've got a view of what's actually in the ground now that we've defined by drilling, but that can sometimes be a little different to basically what you can get into JORC. So I'll get some visibility on those numbers in, 3 or 4 weeks. And then, depending on what it looks like, we may actually quickly spend another month just putting some holes where we've got some gaps before we then actually do another run and get something out. But look, definitely plan is to get it out this half.
And look, there's quite a fair bit of work going on in the background, but what can investors look forward to in the coming weeks and months?
Look, lots of news flow on drilling. Hopefully some good news on metallurgy when we get the reports back, and a couple of other surprises as well that we're quite excited about, but we're still getting things signed and done. So but look, certainly there's going to be a lot to see in Challenger over the next month. With that backlog of assay results and the labs playing catch up, we're certainly not going to be short of interesting, exciting things to say.
Well, great. Thank you so much for your time today. We look forward to hearing more from Challenger in the coming weeks.
Thanks, Jane.